Well, welcome back. This is the last session of a very successful 2-day Future of Food Conference 2021. So I hope everyone who's been with us for the last 2 days has still plenty of energy to put all your questions to our speakers for this final panel. Don't forget, you can also share using the hashtag FutureFood21 because we do want to get people's ideas and thoughts from those who are attending as well as your colleagues as well. I'm going to hand over to moderate this final session to Paola Giavadoni, who is the Director of Innovation at EIT Food, and she'll be steering our studio guests through the discussion about what we can do moving forward. So Paola, are you ready to take over? I'm sure you're going to have a fantastic discussion, but now it's your turn. The floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Jennifer. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this last session of the conference. With this session, we will talk about protein, in particular protein diversification. What are the challenges and the opportunities to scale impactful solutions in Europe? In fact, since a few years, we see a lot of attention. There is a lot of momentum to proteins of non-animal origin, and these to be utilized in food products. According to the Boston Consulting Group, a report of March 21, the alternative protein market size will reach 290 billion by 2035. That means practically 11% of the global protein market. The main drivers for this growth are manifold. The dietary needs, for example, of vegetarian and vegan consumers. We have consumers suffering from intolerances or allergies, for example, from dairy proteins. Or we have consumers who want simply to reduce or eliminate meat consumption for animal welfare reasons, but also the need to reduce the impact on food consumption on the environment, as well as the potential nutritional benefit of alternative protein on people's diet. At EIT Food, we like to think in terms of protein diversification, focusing on development of a broader range of protein options in order to shift away from an over-reliance on resource-intensive animal proteins, as well as to move towards lower environmental impact protein ingredients, but also towards a great variety of nutritious products. Innovation play a crucial role in this shift, as these new proteins need new technologies and know-how to be produced, to be extracted, utilized, and presented to consumers. Innovative entrepreneurs are already developing different solutions based, for example, on plants, on insects, on algae, derived from fermentation, for example, from fungi, or cell-based tissues like what we call the cultivated meat. Many of these solutions are very promising. Nevertheless, we see significant challenges. We see that significant challenges could lower the pace of the market introduction and the potential economic and societal impact that they can deliver. In this session, our aim is to hear from 3 of the rising food stars about the potential barriers and challenges they face in scaling these innovative solutions, and discuss with them and with a member of the European Parliament the potential solutions to overcome these barriers. So we invited 4 speakers that I introduce now. Mr. Francisco Guerreiro, Member of Parliament. He is Vice Chair of the Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development, but also member of the Fisheries Committee of the European Parliament. We also have 3 entrepreneurs from our Rising Food Stars Association. For those who are not here in the previous session, the Rising Food Stars are our successful and game-changing early agri-food scale-ups that have been selected by EIT Food and participate as partner in the EIT Food activities. And here the names are Didier Toubia, the co-founder and CEO of Aleph Farms, and he will talk about cultivated meat. We have Christian Berch, co-founder of Essento, and we will hear from him about insect-based products. And Jim Laird, CEO of the company Enough, and we will hear from him about microproteins. As you probably know from the previous session, you can type if you have questions on the chat, but we will answer them at the end of this round of question and answers. So let's start with Mr. Francisco Guerreiro, with Francisco. I would like to hear, in your opinion, why do we need to diversify our protein consumption, and what is the EU doing in this field?
So good afternoon, thanks for the invitation, and I'll be sure to learn a lot with my fellow speakers. Well, being very briefly, we have a climate need to shift to a more diverse way of producing, distributing, and eating, consumption, food, consuming food, and Europe is leading the way on this path. We are in a political and economic shift, so we are pushing for the Green New Deal, as we all know. There are several instruments that are being also introduced that are helping the economy and this type of new vision in Europe to scale up. So we are talking also about the Farm to Fork strategy, we are talking about the European Maritime Funds, we are talking about the CAP, the Common Agricultural Policy, we are talking about also circular economy. So all these strategies, all these views, all this funding is in one way or another. Obviously, there are some different opinions, but the position, the vision of the European Union is that we need to go further and, well, shift to a more diverse way of eating in Europe. And this also affects international trade. So I would say that with all this science-based approach, these type of developments are necessary for us to have a real concrete transition to a decarbonized society, and where obviously animal welfare is the highest standard, and where citizens have informed decision, and where they can make their decisions based on science, based on knowledge, and so they have access to nutritional food and more local produced ingredients, nutrition, and obviously food. So obviously this is the path to go. Many challenges ahead, but we will discuss this in a couple of minutes. So let's kick out this conference, and thanks once again for the invitation.
Thanks a lot, Francisco. And now I would like to hear, as a first question from the Rising Food Stars, I would like that, more than a question, I would like that you first of all introduce your company and give an idea of the solution that you are developing and what you want to bring to market. I would like also to hear, how does your work contribute to the objectives of the European Farm to Fork strategy, we heard from Francisco, and to the EU ambition to become a climate neutral in 2050. So I don't know who wants to start. Maybe is Christian? You want to start?
Sure. I'm happy to. Well, thank you as well for having me. Quite excited to be here and to be discussing with the other panelists. So my name is Christian Berch. I'm the founder of Essento. Essento is a Swiss and German-based company, one of the European pioneers in the area of edible insects. So we turn sustainably sourced insects from certified European insect farms into delicious food products. For instance, that can be an insect burger, or it can be a protein bar, or it can be a snack. And we currently sell in supermarkets as well as in different restaurants. In addition to what we do as commercial activities, we're also quite active in educating the consumers. Well, when it comes to what we contribute and what our sector contributes to the EU farm to fork strategy, it is really a key on focusing on the circular food system. This especially as insects are fed using side streams, at times even food waste, and basically upcycle them directly into the human food chain again. By doing that, we actually fight the nutrient loss in our food system as well. And when we look at the goals that the EU has set by 2050, given that insects have quite a low CO2 footprint, we do greatly contribute to becoming CO2 neutral by 2050.
Thanks a lot, Christian. What about Didier and your company? What are the solutions that you're bringing to life?
Good afternoon, and thanks for having us at this very high-level panel. Aleph Farms is a pioneer in the cultivated meat industry. Cultivating meat is about reproducing the spontaneous phenomenon for muscle tissue to form inside the animal's body, but on the outside under controlled conditions. We're not a plant-based product where we incorporate the same building blocks as the meat we know. But what we do, we are able to isolate the cells, which are the building blocks of the meat, from a healthy animal, and we transfer them into what we call a cultivator, which replicates the same physical, nutritional conditions as the animal. And we provide those cells with a matrix, which is replacing the extracellular matrix in nature, which is made of collagen in the animal. In our case, it's made of plant protein. So we have a plant matrix on which the cells align, grow, and form a muscle tissue. The benefits of this technique is that we can replicate the very similar sensory, culinary, nutritional quality as the meat we're used to eat today, but with a fraction of the resources. Instead of sustaining an animal for 1.5 years, 2 years, 3 years, we directly grow the steak within 4 weeks with exactly the amount of nutrients, water, energy needed to make the meat. We grow meat in a closed system with no need for antibiotics, so we don't contribute to antibiotic resistance, no potential for zoonotic diseases, no epidemics such as African swine fevers or avian flu or mad cow disease. And last but not least, we avoid the animal welfare concerns which might be associated with intensive farming practices and industrial farming, as we call it. We do see cultivated meat as a supplement to sustainable animal farming practices, and that brings me to the farm to fork, the Green Deal, and biodiversity strategy. Actually, Aleph Farms is the only company in this emerging industry. We aim at launching the first product only at the end of next year. And no products have been yet commercialized in Europe, and there might be a couple of products commercialized over the course of the next couple of years. We've been the only company to commit to net zero carbon emissions by 2025, scope 1 and 2, and scope 3 by 2030. And the food system as a whole is responsible for 31% of the global greenhouse gases emissions and 53% of methane, which is 82 times more powerful than CO2. So we can greatly contribute to the net zero goals of 2035, 2050, but also to the farm to fork strategy as a supplement to organic farming, which is many times less productive. And as you know, farm to fork strategy is calling for increasing from 7 to 20% the share of organic farming. We're inherently fully digitalized, traceable, and transparent as a production system. We can also contribute to biodiversity as we use 98% less land, which can be reverted to forests and reforestation. And last but not least, we also contribute to food security from two aspects. We can address a demographic issue. In France, for instance, 50% of the livestock farmers will get retired over the course of the next 10 years. And our agriculture in Europe is dying. We need to incorporate new production systems to keep up with the pace of meat consumption. And second, we're resilient to any disaster or crisis, and we've been actively engaged with providing comments with the recovery plan of the European Union, and we're involved in food security initiatives in different parts of the world.
Thanks a lot, Didier. Very interesting explanation. And now I would give the floor to Jim to introduce your company and your solution.
Thanks, Paula, and good afternoon. I'm the CEO of and one of the co-founders of Enough. Our purpose is to make protein sustainable and to make non-animal protein at scale. And I think we're all very aware of the predictions of growth, and I like Paula's example from BCG that highlights demand for 100 million tons of new protein solutions by 2035. It always hits me that people like BCG quote 100 million tons, but we have to equate it to how much that means every day. And that quantity means we need 15 to 20,000 tons of new non-animal protein sources every day for the next 5,000 days. And so I celebrate EIT's energy and the energy from this panel to energize this of how do we get to scale and how do we make impact quickly. Enough uses fermentation to address this, and we are currently building what we believe to be the largest new non-animal protein facility being built anywhere globally this decade, and where we plan to have 50,000 tons of capacity before the end of the decade. To put that in context, from our first facility, we will make the equivalent of roughly 40 cows of protein every hour. And our business model is B2B ingredient, and we're very grateful to support from EIT in our journey, and also be part of this panel. I'm also grateful for Didier to highlighting the food and ag accounts for 50+% of methane. And as a company who is founded in Glasgow, we celebrate some of the outcomes of COP26 and highlighting the need for food and ag to play its role in the greenhouse gas emissions. The key stat I like from COP26 is a target for minus 30% in methane by 2030. And clearly with food and ag accounting for 50% of the methane, we see the need, we see the key imperative there.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks a lot. We heard three different cases, Francisco. What is your opinion from what you heard? What are the potential implications or the impact that this innovation can have on the European agriculture, or how can we deal with this implication and with this impact? So what do you think?
Well, there are several key issues that I think that we should come up with. First, the part of waste. So we produce a lot of food that is waste on the European Union. So this has to also be addressed when you're talking about the food system. This correlates with the innovation system also that we have. So we have to innovate also in the distribution of food, and the upcycling of the waste has Christian talked. So in that sense, the Cento build-up market, it's very interesting. Also, that Didier talked about this need to incorporate new perspectives on animal welfare and also land and water usage. So this type of new technology is very relevant. I would say that we do need more studies on the health impacts on humans, obviously, and I think that that's a path that is being taken. So the funding that should be integrated on this type of innovative systems is very important. So nationally, at the European level, also the CP has some areas that can be adapted to finance this type of investigation, or also that adapting into some type of eco scheme. So that's more on the national level. So the national plans can be adapted to that. But we also can upscale this to the perspective of marine life. So obviously, if we are talking about different types of protein, we are making the possibility of exploiting less the oceans. That's also very, very, very relevant when you talk about food systems that we tend to forget. And also, Jim talked about the factory the facility that is building now. I don't know where. It's in also Glasgow. No, sorry, in where?
We are located in the Netherlands, just on the border with Belgium, 20 kilometers north of Ghent.
Okay, so probably I'll make a visit in the nearby future. This is also very relevant for us talking about the future of jobs in agriculture sector. We see a lot of problems on demographics. The rural areas are also being transformed, and so this type of change can also bring about positive and long-term jobs. And so I think that's also very relevant when we are talking about the impacts of technological unemployment, and so this can at least make a clean transition to the different type of decarbonized society. And so having those workers also having training and then entering this type of new production system. So I think that's these areas are very interesting, and well, the diversification of protein is really, really relevant.
Thanks, Francisco. Thanks that you have really highlighted how this is really an ecosystem and how we can really work together towards the same goals. I have a second question for the Rising Food Stars. So your innovations in the field of protein promise to deliver significant benefits, as we heard from all of you, for the environment, for the climate, and this when replacing indeed this animal-based protein. So you also promise to provide consumers with healthy and nutrition options. Are you confident that you can live up to these promises? And if yes, why? And what makes you so confident? What are the key enabling conditions that have to be in place for you to deliver and succeed? Who wants to start? Do I go to Christian again?
Sure, I'm happy to start. Well, when looking at insects, we're definitely quite convinced that we can deliver on the mentioned promises. We already have peer-reviewed scientific studies that prove that the macronutrients as well as the micronutrients are quite easily bioavailable. So we have some concrete proof that actually the proteins that we produce can be easily absorbed and used in our human bodies. When looking at what is needed to for further increase the impact, it's definitely the legal framework that also enables us to use processing technology that do leave those valuable nutrients in the product. And then obviously also on the consumer market aspect to really be able to convince the consumers further to take up those new solutions. I think this is really key when we're talking about innovation, that we also include the end consumers in this game, and not only talk about the innovation for the sake of innovation.
Thank you, Christian. This is very interesting what you say, and I'm sure that you're quite ahead in this experience of bringing products to market. Didier, what is your opinion? So in this, are you really confident that we can, keep up this promises?
At Alefarms, we believe that in order to successfully lead a just and inclusive transition of the farming ecosystem, which would involve the different stakeholders as part of active forces behind those changes, we need to incorporate two types of innovation. On one hand, we need to make the existing systems more sustainable and to increase the efficiency of the existing systems, and that's very much developed in the farm to fork strategy. Digitalization, connectivity, and more organic farming, less inputs to the farming process. But on the other hand, we need to supplement this type of first innovation with a more, let's say, system-based or transformational innovation, and incorporate new production systems to supplement the existing systems with the processes which are net zero and in balance with our natural resources, and providing more resilience and diversifying the supply. And those new production systems might be insects, might be fermentation-based or cultivated meat. Cultivated meat is a relatively early stage. It has a great potential. Again, we should probably see the first products commercialized in Europe in the next couple of years. It started already in other parts of the world. In order to make it happen and to fulfill the potential of cultivated meat, I believe we need on one hand public and private partnership. It cannot be just a private endeavor. Same as with renewable energies, we believe that this transition of the agricultural sector should rely on partnership with the public sector, which will develop policies or incentives to account for the real cost of food. We believe that we should stop incentivizing non-sustainable practices, for instance, such as the UK started to do at the end of last year. On the other hand, we need to invest heavily in public research in those areas, but also to help the farmers incorporating those new production systems in their existing activities. Farmers actually are usually risk adverse, and we believe that the public sector has a role for sharing the risk with the farmers and funding or granting loans to the farmers for them to incorporate those solutions, fermentation-based insects, cultivated meat, training the farmers, and making sure that we're going ahead hand in hand.
Very interesting point of view. So inclusion of farmers in all what you do, basically in the design of your innovation. And Jim, what is your opinion? You are on mute.
So your question is, are we confident? And yes, we are. And maybe for fermentation and mycoprotein, it's an easier challenge than maybe for Didier or for Christian. I think we're confident, and it's driven by, can we make products that consumers love? And if we can do so and they taste as good or better and cost the same or less than the animal equivalent, I think we achieve that aim and we achieve impact. I think we're confident on that because we're making products now and we have a technology which is comparatively relatively lower risk. I think your broader question about risks, I think there is a risk from the industry over claiming or over promising on both time promises and on environmental and nutritional claims. With regards to environmental claims, I think all of the non-animal options have very strong benefits. But it's true that for some of the maybe more high-profile brands, such as Beyond Impossible, they have got long ingredient lists, and therefore we have to be watchful that we don't confuse consumers with and put at risk what is a very strong, nutritious, tasty product has risks of being over-processed. And the benefit of mycoprotein is that you can make it's a whole biomass, and you can make nutritious products with very few ingredients. And I think that gives us a nice. That's one of the enabling conditions which helps us. For me, the most critical thing is this issue of pace, of adding capacity, and how we collectively keep pace with the consumers, because I think consumers are certainly moving in the direction that you've described for all the right reasons. And I guess the constraint in this space for fermentation is we are a capital-intensive business. But the constraint in scale is not really linked by capital costs. For fermentation itself, we are to go for fermentation to become 10% of the world's protein demands. It would cost somewhere around about 50 to 70 billion dollars. Now, it's a huge number. I recognize it's a huge number, but it's about a third of what was invested in renewable energies last year. So it's an affordable number in that context. So whilst we see it, and I think that's the exciting thing for me, if we are genuinely committed to these targets of 2030 or 2035, it's a technology which is accessible today. And I think it's got economics which probably enable private funding to realize it without sole reliance on public-private combinations.
Thank you, Jim. We will explore a little bit more in the last question, but first of all, I would like to ask again, Francisco. Francisco, is the EU doing enough, in your opinion, to support these innovations? Because this is a very new field. What is missing what can be done more? So what is your voice here?
Well, I would say that we could all obviously be doing more. We just voted and approved. I'm talking generally because my group didn't vote in favor, but the CAP, the Common Agricultural Policy, was approved here in the European Parliament, and so it generates a lot of public incentives to the agricultural sector. For me and for some, well, these incentives are not the best ones that could be made. For example, we still continue subsidizing a very high intensity production of farming animals, for example, and we should be investing more on the diversification of proteins. So several examples that were here stated, and so we do think that the approach should be more on that aspect. We also talked about, Jim talked about the Jim and Didier, I think, also talked about the biodiversity strategy, so the reduction of microbial resistance, and so this also should be addressed. And so with the CAP and also with the Common Fisheries Policy, we don't see this broader view being scaled up. But we have good examples from the farm to fork, the implementation of more organic and extensive types of production, but this is just a strategy. So the main drivers, the main funding comes from the CAP, and so we have some challenges here also by allocating public money to this type of diversification of products. And let us not forget that the CAP is the biggest funds that finances agriculture in the world. So we do have a lot of resources. This coupled up with national and regional funding, we could scale up several industries really fast. So the thing, in my perspective, that we still don't have the long-term vision is that we really should transform this sector, fisheries, agriculture, also distribution, and also public information. And well, we are not doing enough, so we can really scale up the transition that we need to do, but we still have good tools. And let's see how the national plans on the fisheries and agriculture will come about, because in those plans, the funding can be there for these types of solutions.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for this, to bring up your opinion. I have the final question, and probably the key one to our rising food stars. So you know that you will not generate impact if you're not able to scale up. So we come really to the scaling up. So upscaling is not an easy to do and can take time. Can you give us an idea of the key challenges and opportunities you face in scaling up, and what are your, let's say, timeline? What are the timeline that you envisage? So where are you with your innovation and the full, let's say, scale up of your ideas, of your innovations? So I would start again with Christian.
Sure. Yeah, happy to start. Well, indeed, as you mentioned, the scale up is indeed the key to harness the potential that all the solutions really have. So on our end, it's obviously the legal framework that is a key, and we've been making quite some progress on the novel food end. So we had a couple of novel food approvals passed this year, which enable us to actually enter the end consumer markets. And what we see is actually the scale up of the production is already happening. So those farms are being built or have just been completed building, and now it's also as I mentioned before, really working together with the consumer, working with the governments to harness the potential of insect-based foods. And something that Francisco has mentioned before, I think it's really key that those novel solutions that are coming up, in order to be able to compete at scale, that we have a level playing field, so that we do not protect the old solutions with frameworks from the past, but that we also enable the new solutions as we're here on the panel to get access to that support and to really be able to offer a a nice, healthy, and sustainable food product to our end consumers in the EU.
Thank you, Christian. I was just reminded that we don't have much time, but I still would like to, of course, to have the opinion of Didier and Jim. So Didier, just to conclude, also from your side, what are the main barriers that you see ahead now in upscaling?
Yes, to Christian's point, I believe that regulation and legal frameworks are very important. And actually, to the question about our timeline, we're currently starting to operate a first production facility, and we're on track for first launch toward the end of next year. Probably not in Europe, unfortunately, and that's a big pain for us. The regulatory framework in Europe are longer and more cumbersome and less economical than in other parts of the world. And I think we need to build frameworks for supporting and fostering innovation without compromising on food safety and on intrinsic safety of products. And that's definitely one. And on the second point, and to rebound maybe on what Jim said before, the renewable energies have been able to scale thanks to public support in terms of tax breaks, of loan guarantees, of incentives. And I believe that the new systems for protein production will also need to work hand in hand with the public players, which will have a role for developing a framework, an incentive framework, to make sure that we have the resources to scale on the longer term and to invest the capex, or to have partners investing the capex together with us. It's a big, very capital intensive endeavor, and I believe it will be difficult for the private sector as a standalone sector to make it happen.
Thank you, Didier. So you said end of next year. In which country the launch?
Probably in Asia. Depending to, again, regulatory approvals, but it's clear that some countries in Asia and the US are much more advanced with the understanding of the environment for the regulatory environment and the safety assessment for this kind of product than Europe. And I would really like, and I'm calling the European institutions to really open a dialogue and a collaborative process, interactive process, to build a path which would ensure both food safety and will also foster innovation.
Thank you, Didier. And Jim, you anticipated already some part of this question in previously, but maybe you can tell us a little bit more, and especially what are the time frame that you have for your innovation. Oh, Jim? Oh no, Jim is gone. I think. Let's see. Jim, you're back. Great. Okay. So I said, if you want just to. Oh no.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. You're here. Yeah, you can hear me.
Yeah.
Did you hear the question?
So just the question of the challenges and the timescale, is that correct?
And the timescale, please. Yes, you already anticipated. So yeah, a few minutes.
I think the challenges for a startup, as Didier and Christian will probably echo, there's many. There's always challenges in funding, technology, market, customer. If I look specifically to your question, in our scale up just now, we're building, and the challenges we're facing is steel prices doubling in cost and electricity prices trebling in cost. But if we focus too long on the challenges, then we miss the opportunity. And the opportunity is vast, and I think all of our technologies are inherently more efficient than the animal, and therefore somehow we'll make the economics work. And I think we are strongly supported in this by collaboration and ecosystems such as that enabled by the EIT, and also to Francisco, and to enough is certainly benefiting, as we are one of the flagship projects under the EU's bio-based industries JU, where along with a consortium of other partners we've benefited. So I think that we look at the opportunities and the people that help us achieve those opportunities, and I thank Francisco on behalf of the whole of the EU, and I thank you, Paula, for EIT. I guess to answer your question then in terms of timescale, and I'll be more simplistic, For us, and enough, our timescale is 10,000 tons of capacity by this time next year. We want 50,000 tons by 2027, and then we have to run harder because I think if genuinely consumers are switching at that stage, then the pace of additional capacity gets very exciting, but it's very rewarding also. So that's our timescale.
And your market? Sorry, Jim. The market?
So the market, we will, within the facility that we have in the Netherlands, I think it will all be consumed within Europe. We are talking to global customers, and we recognize that within our timescale, we have to look at second locations, third locations, and there is a requirement to have similar facilities in North America, in Asia, in somewhere in Middle East, North Africa. But I think in terms of our short-term timescale, our market is, we are a B2B ingredient supplier, so we don't have to compete with the marketing dollars of Beyond Meat, but we think we can provide high-quality ingredient to brands and to customers as meat alternatives and also as fish alternatives, and we also have some work looking at dairy alternatives in the same way.
Thank you, Jim. I know that we are at the end, but I would like to pick up at least one question if time allows. It's okay. They tell me it's okay. So let's go with the last one that I read here. On a very practical level, where do you all, and particularly the cell meat industry, stand regarding sustainability, data, measurement, international publication and studies, beyond savings in agriculture land? And this is from Frédéric Bouvier, Open Innovation Rocket. So I think this is for you, Didier.
Yeah, sure. That's a great question because there had been some confusion around the sustainability of cultivated meat. One, because a lot of the processes are still under development and optimization phase and not yet fully industrialized. And second, because a lot of studies have been performed by academic teams with a very little practical understanding of the processes themselves. The only study which is really relying on data from the industry is one published last year by C. Delft in the Netherlands, which is studying significant benefits for cell-based meat, especially with regard to beef, and when using, and even more when using renewable energies. In our case at Ale Farms, we are working hand in hand with an interactive LCA, life cycle analysis platform, to really optimize our process as we scale up for impact, not only from the land side, but also in terms of emissions, in terms of water, in terms of particles. So we're looking at the impact as a very holistic approach and making sure that we deliver on all the aspects. I remind you that Ale Farms has committed to be net zero by 2025. We published 2 weeks ago an agreement with ENGIE, large European industrial company in the energy sector, to develop our renewable energy infrastructure globally. And we're delivering all our milestones on our net zero plan. So that's very central to us.
Thanks a lot, Didier. We need to come to the conclusion. I would like to thank you all the speakers. I think today it was an interesting, at least, discussion because we put together different points of view. And we could only encourage further this type of discussions. So I would like to say, because this is the last session, as you know, of this conference, on behalf of the whole EIT Food and the whole team who work behind this conference, I would like to thank all of you, all the speakers and all the participants who have taken an active part in the event over these 2 days. Only yesterday we had 790 people connected, so not those who just register, but those who are actually connected from all over Europe and much beyond Europe to follow this event. So we have seen a lot of interaction, a lot of interest in the conference, and especially in the chat. And this is we see that the chat is also a good tool, an interesting tool for the conversation. So a lot of questions and from the speakers. So thank you all for helping and participating and having this lively and dynamic debate. We will, of course, publish a report of the conference so you can hear, you can see maybe some proceedings of this. I just would like to remind you that the Future of Food Conference will be back in 2022. And now I will hand over to Jennifer. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We are now finally at the very end of our discussions for the moment for the Future of Food Conference 2021. Of course, that doesn't mean that we are going to stop talking or that EIT is going to stop doing its ongoing great work. And I'm very, very pleased that they did organize this event and that so many of you tuned in and got involved, asking your questions, using the networking challenges, and really sharing widely on social media as well. Now, I should remind everyone that the replays are still up and will be available right up until Friday. If you missed any events or if you couldn't attend all the sessions because they were in parallel, of course, there are breakout sessions which were also available for you to look back at. So thank you very much indeed for that. Obviously, the hashtag is for you to use FutureFood21. You can do that at any point in time. But of course, we want you to keep conversation going this week in particular. We've heard many great commitments, many great ideas. So go share the word with your colleagues and please do try and bring the optimism that I think we felt over the past 2 days to the wider sector. One final word, I would like you all, if possible, to please fill in the feedback survey. You can find that there on your platform on the right next to the chat button. We'd love to hear what you thought. Give us ideas for next year when hopefully we will be able to meet in person as well as have a contact with you all around Europe and the world because of the possibilities of the digitization that we are so grateful for. Thank you all. I wish you all a great afternoon and hopefully see everyone again next year.